And happy Monday to you. Welcome to the Briefing Room. I'm Devin Dwyer at ABC News in Washington. Great to have you with us. We also have Justin Fischel, our White House producer here, and Ali Rogan, our Senate producer, with us today on some breaking news to kick off this holiday week. The White House has just announced, just coming in now, that they are dropping their effort to revoke the press pass of CNN White House correspondent Jim Acosta. If you followed this story, it created waves just a couple weeks ago when the White House moved to revoke his badge that allowed him to enter White House grounds on account of this incident you're seeing right here with a White House intern and the president, which they said violated White House decorum. It went back and forth in federal court. Jim Acosta received his badge back on Friday, and now the White House says they are backing down. Justin, this is a pretty rare moment of de-escalation with the press.
Absolutely. We sort of had suspicions that they'd continue to fight this with Acosta, and the idea was that they were going to create new rules of decorum and then hold him accountable to those rules for his past actions, and then start all over with this process again of removing it. They've backed down, which is good news for all press. But I do think it sends a signal strongly that that journalists like Acosta have to be on their toes, and a certain level of decorum is expected.
And Ali, you spent some time today reading the briefs in this case. It was an emergency motion was filed by CNN today with a judge. They were headed toward yet another clash in court. It did seem, though, by many legal scholars that the White House response over the weekend didn't hold a lot of water.
Well, look, the White House was arguing that the federal judge had imposed this temporary restraining order to restore Jim Acosta's credentials, arguing that he wasn't making a point on the case of the First Amendment merit, saying that there is an inherent First Amendment right to be in the press office. He was simply saying that Jim Acosta was not afforded his Fifth Amendment rights. And of course, the White House said that, oh, this actually vindicates their argument that there is no inherent right to the First Amendment. But it sure seems that, this federal judge said that, look, there's no need for an emergency injunction here. There's no need to hold this hearing now. We've got the holidays coming up. So it didn't really seem that there was the urgency required to push this forward.
And I don't think, guys, that this by any means the White House is backing down in its feud with Jim Acosta. I think we will see new steps that they will take. In fact, the president just the other day said he could walk away.
That's exactly
if
right.
he doesn't like the questions from Jim Acosta.
But as we know, he does not like to walk away. Yeah. I mean, come on.
He
walks towards
the
cameras,
if he
not
can
away.
Stick to that. But a major development just coming in now from the White House. Meanwhile, the president had quite an interview over the weekend with Fox News Sunday, Chris Wallace. The president making a number of headlines, chief among them that he is now disinclined, he says, to sit down with special counsel Robert Mueller and answer questions under oath. That is a significant development after months, many months, of the president saying he was eager to answer any of the special counsel's questions. Let's bring in our White House producer, Jordan Phelps, who's been tracking the story from the White House. Jordan, this sort of perked the ears of a lot of watchers of this as a major milestone in this back and forth between the president and the special counsel, and this all happening as he's now brought in a new attorney general.
Yeah, the president saying in that interview, there was news on a number of fronts saying that he thinks he's now done with the Mueller probe, which is, of course, is a change from what the president told our John Carl just last year when he said he'd be willing to sit down with Mueller 100%. The president now saying probably not so much. But the big headline I took away from that interview was that the president indicated that he would make no effort to stop the new acting attorney general should he decide to rein in the Mueller probe, which of course is something that all of the president's critics are watching closely. Will this acting attorney general, who many argue doesn't have the proper authority to be in that position, will he try to stop the Mueller probe? And the president making clear he wouldn't stop him.
Right, Matt Whitaker, the acting AG, saying many times before he got the job that he would move to perhaps he would recommend restricting Robert Mueller. The president says he's fine with that. Jordan, the other thing that was in that interview, the president reiterating he's answered a whole host of questions from Robert Mueller, 24 by our reporting on a number of topics, and he's ready to submit them. What are you hearing from the White House today about whether they are ready to submit, have submitted, and what are in those questions?
Devin, the president says he's finished answering those questions. He says they were easy to answer, in fact, and we expect them to be submitted sometime this week. But until we hear from Mueller's team that they have them in hand, it's not a done deal at this point, Devin.
Justin, this seems like quite a significant juncture in the investigation because it either signals, I think, that we're headed quickly toward conclusion if
Right.
Bob Mueller takes the written answers, says, "Thank you, sir," finishes the report, or if it's not enough for Bob Mueller, we could be headed for a fight over subpoenas.
Exactly.
And
if only we could talk to Bob Mueller about what he wanted. I mean, the idea that you might gather is that, okay, well, he takes the questions and then does some further cross-examination of those answers to find out if he's, if what he says is matching up with what other people are saying, particularly about things like that Trump Tower meeting and what he knew ahead of time. And I just go back to, when he says he's not going to talk to Bob Mueller, remember what Bob Woodward put in his book, that Ty Cobb told him, that, Ty Cobb was in the room with the president and said,
Ty
"Sir,
Cobb, the president's attorney.
Former attorney, right. He said, I can't stand with you and let you do this. You're not capable of doing it."
All of those around him told him not to do it. Of course, he seems to be taking that advice now. Meanwhile, he's gotten rid of his problematic Attorney General Jeff Sessions, problematic in his view, hired Matt Whitaker, somebody he sees as an ally, Ali Rogan, and now we have this constitutional challenge that seems to be coming down the tracks here. 3 Senate Democrats today filed lawsuit in federal court alleging that this appointment is not constitutional. Break that down for us.
Yeah, that's right. White House, Blumenthal, and Hirono are filing a lawsuit saying that the appointment of Matt Whitaker to this position, he was someone who served as Sessions' chief of staff before being appointed to the top job, it flies in the face of the Appointments Act, which requires the line of succession to be honored, especially in the case of when an attorney general or another principal officer is fired. So the president has more discretion to appoint someone when that person resigns. And in this case, even though Sessions technically resigned, I mean, it was sort of a resignation under duress. I mean, the president probably went in and said, "Hey, Jeff Sessions, let me get your resignation letter," and that is how it was submitted. So that's the basis under which this lawsuit's coming down.
And joining us now is Elizabeth Wydra. She's with the Constitutional Accountability Center. She's helping bring the lawsuit with those 3 Democrats to hold the president accountable. In her words, Elizabeth, thanks so much for being here. Bring us inside a little bit deeper into the reasoning behind this. The White House is arguing that the Vacancies Act permits the president to make this temporary appointment. It's been done, they say, 160 times over history, and yet you are contending here in court documents that this is simply not constitutional.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on today. You can talk about which statute means what, but what we know for sure is that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And here the Constitution's appointment clause is very clear. When the president wants to install a principal officer, and there's no question that the office of the Attorney General is a principal officer. It's the most important law enforcement office of the land. That the president must get the, quote, advice and consent of the Senate. And so what these senators are doing is to vindicate that crucial check and balance that's in the Constitution by saying, the president put Matthew Whitaker in this position, it appears, because he has views that match more with what the president thinks about important issues like the Mueller investigation. And this is a situation where the founders wanted the Senate to weigh in. Alexander Hamilton wrote about how the reason why the Constitution requires senatorial advice and consent is precisely so presidents would not put people in who would serve their personal interests rather than the public interests. You could basically put Matthew Whitaker in a wig, and he's exactly what Alexander Hamilton is concerned about.
But isn't it true here, Elizabeth, that there has been precedent on a temporary basis for individuals to be put into these positions until such time that a formal nomination can be made, until such time that the Senate can provide that advice and consent? Do you really see in this case that it's unconstitutional in a temporary basis, given all the precedent that's out there?
I think that, first of all, the precedent isn't that strong. The President's Office of Legal Counsel tried to put out this justification for Whitaker just last week that was, frankly, rather flimsy. And, you look at the fact that Rod Rosenstein, who is Senate confirmed, he's available to be the acting attorney general. And, you know, it's incredibly important that the senators get to look at Matthew Whitaker. A lot has been raised, unfortunately, about his qualifications, about questionable legal views, even beyond what he's said about the Mueller investigation. And this isn't, while this suit is being brought by 3 Democratic senators right now, it isn't a partisan issue. We've seen scholars from across the ideological spectrum, including John Yoo, one of perhaps the most infamous lawyers in the Bush administration, saying that this is unconstitutional, including Justice Thomas, who has opined in another case that anytime you have a principal officer, even in these situations where it might be temporary, you have to get the advice and consent of the Senate. So I think that, you know, this is a suit being brought by Democratic senators to vindicate the checks and balances of the Constitution. But it isn't a political issue. It's about the Constitution.
And we will see where that goes. Elizabeth Whitaker with the Constitutional Accountability Center, thank you so much. We also know that there's a suit, guys, brought by the state of Maryland as well. So this is being challenged on a couple of fronts, and we'll see if the president appoints someone else in the meantime, perhaps to get the process moving.
And the bottom line is it hasn't been, it hasn't played out in court yet before. So this question has yet to be answered by a judge, so we'll find out.
Coming down the pike. Moving on today here in the briefing room, some big news coming out of the House, U.S. House up on Capitol Hill, as those House Democrats search for their new leader, begin that process. Nancy Pelosi today is facing some opposition that just got very real. 16 Democrats have now signed a letter, put their name on paper, coming out against her selection as the next Speaker of the House. This is significant in that these people have put their names. It had been rumored for days. They're now on the record, guys. And we can't say it enough. The Speaker of the House is one of the most critical positions in this town, Allie, in the line of succession. She wants it badly. She is dug in, and yet her party is putting up quite a challenge.
Yeah, she is defiant that she is going to be the next Speaker of the House. She's been inviting, in fact, other challengers, saying the water's warm because she is so confident that she's going to win. Now, this new letter, 16 Democrats, one of them actually looks like he's going to lose his re-election bout. So
it's really 15.
It's really 15, but Nancy Pelosi,
enough.
it is still exactly the threshold needed that would deny her the speakership on the House floor when the entire House sits down on January 3rd to elect the Speaker. She needs 218 votes, which means right now she can lose 15 people. They say that they are thankful to her. They call her a historic figure, but they note that this recent election was about a message of change, and that their majority came on the backs of candidates who said they would support new leadership. And in fact, a lot of people explicitly ran against Pelosi. So now they're saying we have to abide by that promise. However, of course, the big question is, who can be the viable alternative? And
how do you mount a challenge when you don't have a challenger? So it seems very difficult. They don't have a leader to pick here.
And don't forget, what could save her? President Trump said he would save her. President Trump said it's all about the vote on the floor with Republicans as well. And the president says he'll give her Republican votes.
Republicans would absolutely love if Nancy Pelosi was the Speaker again. And so I think that's the double-edged sword. People know what an experienced legislator she is, but they also know what a lightning rod she is for Republicans.
Why is he doing that, Devin? Why is the president offering to give her votes?
Well, it's no secret that Nancy Pelosi's approval rating and favorability rating in the public eye is extremely low. It's 17% in the latest CNN poll. Independents in particular don't like Nancy Pelosi. She's become this lightning rod of opposition, whether you love her or hate her, for right or for wrong. That's what she is. Donald Trump loves a foil. He wants her in the game, especially as he heads to 2020. He thinks that he can campaign against Nancy Pelosi, and that would be good for him. So, hey, if he can help Pelosi be Speaker, might help him out. We shall see. Meanwhile, the Democrats' majority in the House is growing. They're up to 233 seats by the latest ABC News count. But the Republicans are picking up more seats on the Senate side over the weekend. Some big news coming out of Florida with 2 still as yet undecided, now decided races there have been resolved. The Florida Senate race there, you see there, Rick Scott is the new senator, Republican senator from Florida, unseating Bill Nelson after that recount battle. And in the gubernatorial race, you saw Andrew Gillum concede to Ron DeSantis. You see him there, former congressman. That was a brutal battle. The president coming in for Ron DeSantis. He's the new governor of Florida. Florida. And up in Georgia, that governor's race also hotly contested. It would have been historic. Stacey Abrams essentially gave guys a concession speech over the weekend to Brian Kemp. You see here, Georgia getting purple, Allie, but not quite there.
Well, Stacey Abrams has conceded in a technical sense, although she would not over the weekend say that Kemp was the legitimate winner of that race. She was citing a lot of inherent structural problems with that vote.
And a lawsuit she filed as well, even after she conceded.
Yeah, so she's saying that, yes, he won the technical amount of votes needed to get you elected, but not that he did so in a way that reflects a fair playing field for everybody who voted.
We should say, if you're watching us and thinking, wow, this campaign is just about over, the recounts are done, wow, this thing was a bruiser. There's still one more Senate race to go. It's in Mississippi. Allie has been tracking it. It is the only race, big race, that's outstanding. Republican state, Allie. The Republican has a slight edge there, but surprisingly close.
This has been an incredible race, and as you said, the Florida and Georgia being wrapped up sort of allows us to put the spotlight directly on this race, which has become very nasty. In the original race, the two candidates, a Republican incumbent who was appointed to the seat,
Cindy Hyde-Smith,
and Mike Espy, the Democrat, are within less of a percentage point than one another, and they're short of the 50% outright victory needed to avoid a runoff. So that race is headed towards a runoff November 27th. That's a Tuesday
after Thanksgiving.
That's a Tuesday after Thanksgiving.
And the president will be there in 2 stops on Monday. This is the problem overall that the president has had with this election. Yes, he won seats in the Senate, but these Democrats are getting really close in red states, and that does not bode well for him for 2020.
Well, there's a few things that make this race, as most races like this are, very specific, and that is that Cindy Hyde-Smith faced a very difficult Republican challenger who took away about 15 points from her. And now it's become a way closer race because of some of the hidden videos that came out revealing some of Cindy Hyde-Smith's statements that I'm sure she didn't want to come out. Very
controversial statements seen as racist in many corners.
The first one, which was made on November 2nd, so actually before the race, but it didn't come out until 2 weeks later, she embraced a supporter at a campaign rally. And in praising the supporter, she said, quote, "If he invited me to a public hanging, I'd be on the front row." And of course, the use of the word hanging in Mississippi South, Espy is running to be the first African-American senator in Mississippi since shortly after the Civil War. So those are words that he has remarked as being racially insensitive. And this has not been a race-driven race until now when these comments have come out. She also made another comment about sort of joking about election
voter suppression.
Exactly. So these are some comments that she argues were made offhand, but it's certainly tightening up the race and making it competitive.
A lot to watch in Mississippi, a state like Georgia, where the dark past of the South and racial discrimination looms large. It's a race definitely worth watching. As Justin says, the president headed there for not one but 2 campaign rallies the Monday after Thanksgiving, and we'll have them here for you on ABC News Live. But we are, speaking of Thanksgiving and the holidays, marching that much closer toward Christmas time at the White House. And today we got a little sign of Christmas. The Christmas tree, the traditional national Christmas tree, arrived in a carriage as per tradition. Nice. There it is. They were playing some Christmas carols. Sort of shocking that we're already hearing that. There she is, the First Lady. The President actually coming out this year to greet the tree. And our Jordan Phelps, we can call her the holiday correspondent, was there for it all at the, and we'll bring her back in at the White House. Jordan, you not only covered the Christmas tree beat today, but you were also on the turkey beat. Those turkeys headed to the White House tomorrow. Tell us about them.
That's right, Devin. And if you thought that Christmas tree came early, that's because it did. This event, the arrival of the Christmas tree usually happens after Thanksgiving, later than it did this year. But the White House has noted that they have to actually remove an entire chandelier to put this Christmas tree up. So maybe they thought, put the tree up while the first family is down in Mar-a-Lago for Thanksgiving. And you mentioned those other elections that are wrapping up. Well, there's still one very important election underway here in Washington, and that's to pick the National Thanksgiving Turkey. We have peas and carrots. People can go online now and choose which one you want to get the presidential pardon tomorrow here at the White
Jordan,
House.
Can you tell them apart for us? We're seeing some pictures that you shot here of peas and carrots. They're only 5 months old. Those are look at those guys.
Healthy birds.
They're from South Dakota.
That's right. That's peas and carrots in their hotel suite in the Willard. These are some
Gross.
pampered turkeys.
I don't want to stay in that room.
No, they are free-range turkeys, you might say. But Devin, you noted these turkeys are already 5 months old. Neither one will lose their lives and meet their fate of the Thanksgiving table like so many millions of turkeys around the country. But they only have a few more months to live regardless, because these turkeys were bred to be eaten. And the Virginia Tech University professor who is going to take these turkeys after tomorrow tells me that if they live to be a year tops, that's really good. So
Wow.
they might not see the end of their lives later this week, but it's just a few months away.
And tomorrow we'll have that turkey partying for you live here. Jordan, I know you will be there. Thank you so much. And on that note, I must say, peas or carrots, Justin?
I'd eat them both. Love them
Those
both.
names are so unoriginal. I feel like every year they get less and less original. I remember
it
like
was
cobbler
popcorn and cobbler and
cobbler,
you know what I'm
gobbler.
saying.
Like, I think we need some off the beaten path. Maybe like Brussels sprouts or
Yeah, just
I don't know,
go
kale.
down the list.
Some interesting Thanksgiving vegetables.
And God bless to them, because it's so sad that they don't live very long
Yeah.
lives after
That's-
they're officially
Oh, well.
pardoned. Anyways, that's it for us here today in the briefing room. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you back here tomorrow, 3:30 Eastern Time on ABC News Live. For Justin Fishel, Ali Rogan, I'm Devin Dwyer. We'll see you next time.